Hi, welcome back. My name's Newman and this is my life with plants. Today we're going to have a little look at all the plants that I have in the living room. So I haven't done a tour in the living room, and if I have, it hasn't been for a long time. Anyway, let's get started. In my house, the windows are very tall and narrow, but I make use of all the space. Right here we have a Neoregelia. There's a baby coming up right there, and it is in this little tiny plastic pot. If I just put my finger there, you can, or my hand, you can get an idea of how big these pots are. They're still in the nursery pots in Cocoa Choir, but they grow really well in this medium. And what I did is I pulled out the plant and all the roots all intact with the soil, and I made a hole in the pot going into this stick, and then I screwed a stainless steel screw into there, and then popped the plant back in. So you can see here that we have a Guzmania. It's called Ice Cream, and those two are mounted on in their pots. So if you have trouble keeping up the watering on your epiphytic plants, you can actually screw the pot and just attach it to the log here. If you see right there, you can see that a screw has actually gone into the wood, and I didn't have to drill any holes, I just screwed it straight in, no problem. So it's through the pot on the inside into the stick, and then I put a brass hook on there with some bonsai wire, and voila. Of course, when I do water, I take them to the sink. They do drip a lot because they have the holes in the bottom, but I do put some paper towels on top of my phalaenopsis here so that the water doesn't drip into the crown. Right here we have Hoya Lai that is native to China, and Hoya Lai has these magnificent cupped leaves. This is mainly a lithophytic, growing on rocks, scrambling over rocks in the jungle. This one has some aerial roots there, but at the same time you can grow it as a dangling hanging plant, because I'm pretty sure in its native habitat it cascades over rocks and hangs down, and whatever it attaches to, it'll get some roots. This one hasn't been repotted, it is still in its nursery pot. I haven't disturbed it. Did take some cuttings off it to propagate, and this one is in this, let's see now, east window. Right next to it is Hoya cuticii, and it has been repotted into, out of all things, Akadama. Akadama is a kind of volcanic clay that's very friable. It can crumble in your fingers. It's not sticky like typical clay, and it does retain some moisture. It also lets a lot of airflow into the plants, and this particular Hoya cuticii struggled in cocoa chips and bark and pumice. It did not want to root into it, no matter what I did. I made sure I watered it with good water that didn't have chlorine or anything in it, but as soon as I put it in the Akadama, voila, it came to life. It's been struggling for years and years and years, probably 4 years. And since I've done that, it is really growing. So I guess that Cutesia is more of a lithophytic to semi-terrestrial, which means that it'll grow in pockets of well-draining soil in between rocks, and partly epiphytic, but it has a love for soil. Likes to grow in soil, more of a soil mix that's well drained. See all those nice roots there. This is getting big enough that in the springtime I will have a bit of a propagation. And this one is in self-watering pot. That is the pot that it's potted into, and it's sitting inside here. However, I do not keep water in there at all. When I do water it, I drain it all out, and this is just to keep humidity around the roots and around the plant so that it keeps happy and it doesn't dry out too fast. Down here is in amongst Hoya Cutesia's jungle of hanging drooping leaves. We have a phalaenopsis. That's a typical phalaenopsis jumbo size one that has the white flowers with the yellow center. It has all these lovely roots growing right here and here, super long. The biggest mistake I made with my phals was to keep them moist, whereas they prefer to be watered and to let dry right out until the point that you push your finger down up to the first joint, and it should be quite crunchy. The sphagnum moss, that is, should be quite crunchy. If it doesn't feel like it's crunchy when you poke your finger into it, it's still retaining some moisture, you better leave it alone. And the reason for that is because it's growing in a pot that's quite deep. This is a mixture of sphagnum and bark, by the way, so not all sphagnum, but if it was a lithophytic grown on a mount, you'd have to water it every other day, probably every day, but because it's in a pot, you better watch out. It likes to dry right out in between waterings. Next to it is this one that I got for $5 a year ago, yesterday, because at my workplace we go to a special venue to do a part of our end of the year entertainment, and at that particular venue outside is a depot, and they have phalaenopsis. They always have a good selection of phals, and I did pick this up for $5 last year, not asking the staff there if they knew what kind of flower it had, but they weren't sure anymore because the last flower had dropped off. And it is still growing in its sphagnum moss. I did not repot it, but once again, when I do water it, it's still in a plastic clear pot. Let me just put this camera down, and I'll just take this out and I'll show you what I mean. Wait a minute. Okay. Truly is a jungle now. Alright. What I want you to see is just how healthy these roots are. They naturally get roots that die off. It's normal. But you can see that all those roots are healthy, right? Now, you'd be tempted to water it again because you see a little drying out there, but no. Definitely do not water it until it is thoroughly dried out all the way down to the bottom. And I do soak it in the sink or run the water through it, as I said before. And then I'll give it the good nutritious water, put it back in its pot, make sure that I drain out any excess like that. And then only when it's completely dried out and crunchy to the touch. I'll give it another watering, and that could be in the next few weeks because it is winter here. It's getting these big aerial roots. So yeah, when you do get a phalaenopsis and it's in sphagnum moss, just remember that orchids, once they're planted in something and they are doing well enough, there's no reason to mess with the roots, especially when you take all the medium all off the roots until it's bare and then you start cutting them. Do not worry about you're going to get some dead roots in there. It won't hurt the plant. Actual use, it'll reabsorb it and turn it into nutrients. Just make sure that when you water, you let the water run through it. Give it a good soaking, and then put in the good water that you provide for your plants after that. And use some dolomite lime. Ta-da! Next up, check this out. This is a roll-packed plant display. And right here, look how healthy these leaves are on this phalaenopsis. This one has very light yellow flowers. Very, very dainty light yellow flowers. And I think it's going to start producing buds soon. You can see inside there all those lovely green tips on the roots. This one is treated the same. Did not repot it. It's still in its original pot. This porcelain. And inside here are the plastic see-through pots, and there's actually 2 orchids in there. They were sold like that. This one was, it had 1 flower left on the stalk, and I bought it a year ago yesterday. And ever since then it has grown a lot, put out a lot of new healthy roots, and I let it dry right out. Still in sphagnum moss. And remembering that the medium is not what makes the orchid grow, it's the nutrients that you provide when you water it, and the medium is just for something for the orchid to grab onto. So don't forget that, okay? You're thinking that you might have to repot them straight away and put them in a more nutritious mix, but not orchids. They don't. I mean, you could just put it in lava rock and it would be absolutely happy in that too. Yeah. Just don't be in a hurry to repot anything if it doesn't need it. Disturbing roots sets plants back terribly with orchids. This right here is my Rincon Stylus gigantea, or gigantea if you pronounce it that way. It has put out a nice new leaf here since getting it, and it's got one in there, and this one has been indoors all the time. It is in sphagnum moss, and it's in a little tiny terracotta pot. Rincon Stylus gets a little bit bigger than this, a little bit, and it can offset quite a lot. It is a slow growing orchid, but it has magnificent white fleckily flowers, can be stunning purples and reds, magenta. They almost look really, really waxy and thick, waxy flowers that are super fragrant, but I've never experienced the fragrance yet. I do have another one that's mounted because it didn't particularly like being potted. This one, however, is doing fine in the sphagnum moss, and it dries right out until it's very crunchy and dry before I water it. Next to it is a Ischcananthus. Forget the name, but it has very, very hairy leaves, and this thing is growing like a weed, which is nice. very, very fast growing, and they will have the typical Eschenanthus flowers, quite hairy, bell-shaped flowers. I've always wanted to have one, and they had them in little tiny planters for $2 each. Right here is a Hoya. I've got a name there. It says Selegamiana or something like that. And actually I found another 2 or 3 that have this kind of leaf. And what I was paying a particular attention to is the middle vein and the 2 side veins. I was trying to look for images that had this kind of veining, and I found 2 or 3 that are almost identical, and now I don't know what it is. Unfortunately, it was sold with just a big label on it saying Hoya. That's it. It is quite sensitive to cold. You can see some darkening on the leaves. That looks like burning or disease, but it's not, it's cold. It didn't like the cold. I had to move it from the other room. This room has air conditioning, so every night we turn it on. That keeps it happy, so it's quite sensitive to cold, this Hoya. I won't know what it is until it's flowered. Next to it in this basket of sphagnum moss, there's a kind of tillandsia that has these 2 offsets of the older plant, and in the back there is another kind of tillandsia that's planted in cocoa fiber. Does have a flower spike. It's quite an unusual variety. I can't remember its name exactly, but it is zip tied to the side of this basket. Down here is the Australian native orchid, and my brain is stuck right now. I don't know why. These ones have beautiful mini bunches of flowers that kind of remind me of pansies a little bit. Unfortunately not fragrant, but there are a few that have some slight fragrance. This one was growing outdoors in the shade. It is an orchid that does produce a lot of offsets like that to form a clump. Flowers are beautiful. Yeah, its name will come back to me. It is in sphagnum moss. I bought it like that. And for the winter it's inside. You can see there that it's putting out some new leaves. It's nice and healthy. You can see a root that's actually grabbed onto the pot there. So all is well with that. Next to it is a Hoya Bella. It's in a self-watering pot. This is one that I cut up and regrew again because Hoya Bella, after a few years, it will naturally lose its leaves, become quite bare, so you just cut and propagate, start again. This is phalaenopsis sakuran. There is another name for it. It's the only one I can remember for now, sakuran, and it has all of these flower spikes. Wow. Every year in the winter time I get these flower spikes, and they have an abundance of flowers that are about this size, and they're very fragrant, so almost like a rosy smell. It's like a beautiful rosy soap that you would buy. Very floral. It's got a nice new leaf here. It has become a double, so it had a very large keiki that couldn't be taken off because it was more or less offset from the main plant, which is great because that has supplied even more roots and more ways that the plant can get nutrients. This one is in a self-watering pot, so it's one pot slipped inside another. So the one with the holes in it is the one it's planted in, and it has an outside pot, which I do not keep water in. It is to keep the plant from drying out too quickly. So believe it or not, phalaenopsis like to be watered and soaked thoroughly, and then all the excess water tipped out, put into a outer pot, just to keep the humidity in there and make it dry out slowly, not too fast. They kind of like it that way. So it's given me a lot of success. Outdoors, however, would be different. You'd probably have to water it a whole lot more, and a lot of people do mount. Okay, next to it is this variegated phal. It is growing really well, and I did spot a alright, I'm pretty sure that spiky thing there is no, that's an old, okay, I can't see any buds yet, but it will be producing them. It has grown off onto the side here. However, I prefer my phals to look natural, and to do that, so I have no problem with it. Wants to grow sideways, and looking forward to getting flower spikes, and it will. It's a nice healthy plant. It'll have a very dark purple flower. Down here is a begonia, cane begonia. It was a cutting off a plant downstairs from the mother-in-law, and she wanted to throw it out. I put the 3 pieces in water, rooted them up. They've been put into potting medium now. They have to stay in this heated room over the winter. Down here is just a bunch of Peperomia Hope cuttings. This whole stem snapped off when I was watering it. And you can see that it's starting to get roots, so I'll be potting those up. I did not cut the stem off. It broke off by accident. It was very, very, very long. Okay, up here is a huge pothos, golden pothos. This one I water liberally. When it's dried out, I give it plenty of water. I don't let it sit in water by the way. I just soak it thoroughly. Sometimes I bring it to the tap and give it a good soaking. Drain it out and then give it another additional water of the water that has the dechlorinizer and a little liquid feed. And it is growing really well. It grows so well, in fact, that I have to keep trimming it often. I think it's up for a watering. It's getting a little dry there, and it doesn't get bold on top, and the reason for that is when I did make this display, I put at least 10 cuttings in there, which keeps it nice and thick. And if it does get bold up there, I will get one of these tendrils, and I will just flip it up across the top and have it dangle down the other side, which is a way to stop that. Next up, we have this jungly looking window, and these plants are really growing. This one is a Ischenanthus. Its last name I cannot remember for right now. I haven't had enough practice saying it, but Marmarata, yeah. love this plant. It's very common. However, I didn't have one. And I did find a small plant. 3 little tiny plants in a $2 pot. I planted it up and it's been growing really, really well. It's in a pretty well draining mix. It's potting mix and pumice. It's in a pot here so I don't drip it everywhere. When I water it, a little collects in the bottom, which is fine. It's got a lot of drainage in there. So this is a plant that I really like a lot. It's up for a watering today. You may think that this is all a hassle. Take it off, take it down. But I buy them to enjoy them. So I mean, just having them up there all the time isn't what I want to do. I like to bring them down to look at them, to enjoy them. Okay, let me just grab this one. I wish I had looked up the name because I kind of forgot. Its common name is watermelon begonia, but it's not a begonia. This is a pretty fantastic plant because as it grows, and you can have it in a hanging pot because naturally it does cascade down in the jungles. It'll grow into a very low mat of a plant that just cascades down, with all the leaves will be flat on the top. It's pretty spectacular, very common, nothing rare here, and it has these magnificent colors in these leaves. These leaves are striking. The flowers are pretty insignificant, but the leaves are amazing. Pretty sure that when these flowers do open, they carry some pollen, so if you got allergies, just snip them off. This is still in its original pot. It's a semi-hydro. I did put a little bit of slow release fertilizer in there, but every second watering I'll take it to the sink to water it thoroughly and then tip it upside down to drain it out so there's no salts building up. And that's what I will be doing after this video. And put it back next to it, if I can reach a little bit closer. And got turned off right there. I hit the button as I was stretching up to grab this Hoya. You know, that one. Hitchkilliana, something like that. The variegated form. But I've seen this grown by a lot of growers, and what's magnificent is the variegation on it. And it's a stable variegation, so it doesn't revert back at all. It's very stable and just has all these wonderful light green to creamy colors. And I did put it in a glass. You can see all these roots growing there. It's growing right down into the medium. Thing is with Hoyas is don't let them go bone dry. If you do let them dry right out, you should water them right at that point. But if they dry right out till they're bone dry and they've been left for 1 or 2 weeks after that, you're going to have some problems with the root system. And I've had that before, so at that time you ought to get a little squirty bottle and just squirt a little bit of water in and wait till it perks up, and then wait a week and then give it another bit of water. Yeah, don't drench it, whatever you do. You might get the rots, but in my case, I'm always pulling my plants down. Because like I said before, I want to have a look and enjoy them. This one's doing really well. It's growing its root system and all of that. It is winter. Even though it's warm in here, it's not the summer time. So it'll be quite slow for now, but it'll pick up. Next up in this jungle, hiding here. It's quite interesting. I had bigger windows, but I don't. It would have been nicer if I had a bay window. This is another phalaenopsis that I've had for about 2 years now. It's growing really well. So there's nice shiny big healthy leaves, and you can see that it is continuously putting out new roots, and it has a flower spike that's pretty hard to spot, but there it is. It's riding right along underneath that leaf there. It'll have lovely orangey yellow flowers. Very, very spectacular. Next to it is another Hoya Bella, because I can't get enough of Hoya Bellas. To me, Hoya Bellas are one of the most beautiful Hoyas, and they're so easy to grow in the home. They love growing in the home, and they like to have a self-watering pot that actually has water in it constantly. They don't like to dry out. And if you do dry them right out, bone dry, then you will be inviting mites, spider mites will come in. So that is that one. It actually has some flowers here too. It's a nice addition because you will keep getting flowers even through the winter. And the fragrance is lovely. Alright, up here we have a Nepenthes alata that grows outdoors under the tree. However, you can't stand these minus temperatures, so I came in and I do see a bit of webbing up there, which means that we are starting to get, or I'm starting to get, the beginnings of spider mites, which is, I kind of expected that with this kind of plant. So no panic, I will wipe down the leaves. That's all I will do, is just give it a wipe. Its pitches here have suffered a bit because it went from high humidity to lower. And of course I had to drain all the pitches out because I'm bringing it inside in case they tipped on the sofa. They were full of bugs, hundreds and hundreds of little bugs. And then I put some nice chlorine-free water back in there. This picture here is still fine, and it will produce more. You can see some are actually developing on the end of these leaves. They might not develop all the way. They may just stay small like this until they are taken back outside, but definitely it's getting taller. And I saw webs on it. So webs are a giveaway for spider mite. I'm going to wipe it all down. Okay, Over here is a little mini phal that I bought. I just bought this yesterday, no, the day before. Look at that flower, that's magnificent. And also this mini phal here, these flowers. I've always wanted these ones with this veining. This beautiful purpley, pinky. And they're just little tiny miniatures. And what I did is to be able to display them, I put a chain. I put twist ties on there, and I made a hook with a loop. I had to put 2 twist ties on the chain and feed the hook going down between 2 twist ties. Otherwise it'll flip right over. And I put a weight on the bottom, which is this lovely carved crystal lizard, just to stop them flipping over. So those are my 2 new orchids. You can see some damage on there, but I'm not fussy like that. I'll still buy it. It's fine, it's healthy. It's just, it got a bit of damage at one point, no problem. It's got good healthy roots. This is a Hoya that I have in my bedroom. It's a Hoya Sunrise. It doesn't have the deep red on it. It's just dark green because it is in a lower light situation. However, it does still flower fine. Right next to it is phalaenopsis silver something. It's got this new leaf coming away. I did move it a little bit closer to the window, not in direct sun, but I didn't like it. So now it's down here in amongst all these vines and that, where it gets even less light, which makes it happier. It's got lovely silver. You can see it glisten. It's like walking on the beach, and it glistens under the light. It's very nice. And this one here is my very old Hoya David Cumingiana. This one has very dark colored flowers. Typical umbel, just like a normal Hoya. Actually down here you can see this old peduncle here that's been giving out a lot. And down here we have some active ones. The 2 active ones right there that have buds on them. So it's always trying to bud up and flower over and over. It's a non-stop flowerer, just flowers non-stop. And it even tries to flower in the winter time too, if the room is warm enough. I bought it as this big plant, and I have taken cuttings off it twice and grown 2 more plants. I've given away a couple. Hopefully they are enjoying this plant as much as I am. I water it really thoroughly and let it dry right out. It doesn't have any saucer or any, it's just hanging free like that with no saucer on the bottom. So when I do water it, I have to let it drip dry before I put it back. And down here we have a phalaenopsis. Those tissues are there because there's a Dischidia up there that I just watered. We have a nice flower spike on that one, and this one here has a flower spike, and this is the keiki off my Phalaenopsis sakura. And sakura is the Japanese word for cherry tree, so the fragrance and the look of the flowers all resemble the cherry tree. That's hence the name. And this one is, I think this is the 3rd time it's flowered. So it has been a keiki that's been taken off and grown for the past 4 years. And it's getting in to be quite a large plant there. I was going to give it away, but the person said, oh, I can't look after it, I can't do it. I tried my best to tell them that they're really not that difficult if you just follow a few things that I can let you know, but they didn't want it. But I was glad to keep it. I just wanted to give it away to share, you know. But part of me didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep it. All right. I said this shittier, so I better show you it. Here it is here in the jungle. It's got that net. That net is just to block out excessive sun. They can burn it. But this one is, I have to put the name on the screen. It's a very good grower. I haven't repotted it, it's still in its original pot. And I noticed how hardy it is because it's been in the nursery for maybe 4 or 5 months. And all they do is just water it and have it in very low light. They don't actually have it outdoors at all. And it's just surviving off very minimal light. And it was still growing happily and still looked healthy. And I thought, wow, that's a good hardy plant. Nice jungly looking too. Being a Dischidia, it'll have little tiny pink flowers. And I don't mind little tiny flowers. They're a nice addition to your collection. Makes it interesting. And there we have it. This is the Livingroom Jungle, and I'm going to get to work on that. Give it a good wipe down. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tour of my plants in the living room. And if you have any questions, let me know. If there's something that I forgot to name, you can ask me and I'll give it a name for you. Okay, this one's Sarcochilas. There you are, the Australian native orchid, Sarcochilas. Sarcochilas is a beautiful orchid, very easy to grow, so I remembered its name. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time. Bye bye.